Hello, John Bloodworth Gentleman Crafter here with part 8 of my Fun with Foundation Paper Piecing video series. This is the last one for February and it's called the Cracker pattern. Now it's actually made up of strips and triangles. So the triangles we've formed from one square and the strips are just basically strips. All of this information is on the free download that you can get from my blog, gentlemancrafter.com. Now the pattern itself are obviously printed onto foundation paper piecing, and we're going to be working from one corner to the next in sequence and finishing by capping off with two opposing corners. I'm starting by sticking the first part wrong side face down on the back of the pattern, and then I will position part 2 up against the edge of that, making sure that it has a 1/4 inch either side, as you can see here. So it should actually come into contact with the outside seam allowance. I'm pinning that in place, very awkwardly by the looks of it, and then I'm going to stitch on the line, the dashed line, between parts 1 and 2. Don't stitch along the dotted line, that's just a positioning guide. Lock stitch at the start, use a short stitch spacing, and then lock stitch at the end. Trim the threads between each stitch, between each stitching or each part. And that way it'll keep it neat and tidy and clean for you. Press back part 2. Use a finger presser or a mini iron to press that seam down. Then I'm going to fold back between lines 2 and 3. Use my add a 1/4 ruler just to make sure that it's got a straight edge, which it does. And then I can move on to positioning part 3 in place, ready for sewing. That goes right side face down against part 2. Pin in place and stitch. Now of course the cutting guide gives you my colour combination. You can adapt this if you want. There are pattern locations for each part listed against the combinations, or the sizes, sorry. So feel free to change this up if you want to. Probably be easier if you follow along though. And of course, if you want to share what you make with these block patterns, whether that just be a single block or an entire project, please feel free to pop along and join the Facebook group that I've set up for people to do that. I will leave a link for that below the video on YouTube and of course on my blog gentlemancrafter.com. If you're enjoying this series, please remember to give the videos a thumbs up and also subscribe. I'm just folding back and trimming just to make sure again that edge is straight because I'm using that to line up the next part. Pin it in place and stitch. When you're painting by numbers like this with foundation paper piecing, your blocks do come together very quickly, and that's something that I personally love about this technique. There are of course lots of other block forming techniques that you could even combine with this. So you could use solid block colours, or blocks that you've formed in other ways, like English paper piecing. The finished block size for this particular pattern is 3 inches. So you just need to keep that in mind if you're going to be combining this pattern in with others. Folding back and pressing. folding back and trimming. As you can see, once you've learnt the very basics, pretty much any foundation paper piecing pattern is available to you. Now with part 5, one of the triangles, you just need to make sure that this is exactly central, because this is going to cover the remaining space towards that corner, and if it's misplaced it will affect its ability to do that. Remember again, stitch exactly on that dashed line. Going either side will affect the positioning of that triangle as well. Okay, as I said, capping off that strip of fabrics with 2 triangles either side. So start with part 6, and again make sure that it runs exactly on that diagonal. And stitch along the line that divides this from the rest of the pattern. I'm using black thread throughout all of this, just purely because it's loaded in the machine and I'm being incredibly lazy. If you want a very professional finish, then you would generally match your colour threads to the fabric that you're using. That way you don't see them when you press the seams back. After you're finished, you can of course top stitch any design or detail you want onto the top of the quilt blocks. Maybe I'll cover that in a video later in the year as well. So the final triangle is going down, again making sure that it's aligned with that diagonal. Making sure that your starting sewing position is exactly on that line, and stitching all the way down. Now this pattern actually gives you the option to rotate the blocks and get even more variation from the design. So if you're going to do a pattern made up from a number of these, then try out different things. Maybe even get a squared paper and try out different options before committing, or lay them out on your table to make sure you're happy with how that pattern works. Now the final step is generally trimming up against that solid edge, so you're trimming away all the paper and all the fabric. Apologies for my autofocus, as I mentioned before, it hates reflections of light on plastic. Not sure why. Maybe I should just move the lights. Yeah, that'd be an idea. Take your time with this step to make sure that it's all accurate, as this will help you later on when you're assembling the blocks. Okay, there we go. That is cracker block done. Now you can see there's a slight difference in the thing there, but that fabric's still within the seam allowance, so it's fine by me. Okay, thanks for watching.